You're listening to Therapy in the Diaspora, a Diaspora Therapy Group Podcast. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Therapy in the Diaspora. My name is Annissa, I use she, they pronouns, and I'm currently a marriage and family therapist at Diaspora Therapy Group. And today I'm joined by Karla. Karla, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me. I'm Karla Dubon. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. And I run a private practice called Millennium Counseling.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here with me today and to talk about such a great, vast subject that we're going to get a little bit into, but touching on different forms of media, touching on film, TV shows, movies, books, music, everything under the umbrella that goes under like pop culture sort of things, and getting little tidbits on how we bring this into our daily lives and also how we bring it into our work with our clients. So, uh, Karla, I got to know you through TikTok and specifically uh, talking about vigilantism and using that in the form of therapy. And I'm curious how that conversation was sparked and how that became something that you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, so I took a training through this place called Geek Therapeutics. I was like, this is the perfect spot for me. So I occasionally will scroll through the trainings that they're offering. They have some really cool ones. And I saw this, talking about trauma through the lens of Batman and healing through vigilantism. And in the state of, where we're currently at within the political climate, it felt kind of apt to learn more about how people can heal some of their trauma through not necessarily vigilantism, but through rebellion in some way. And having conversations with my clients about, the anger that they're feeling and the rage and the grief and, all those things relating to things that Batman feels as well. Um, and so, kind of talking about how to channel that anger in what feels like a healthy way, or to even process what it feels like to want to kind of um, express that rage in an unhealthy way as well.
Yeah, of course. And just to clarify, you are based out of Missouri, correct? Are you licensed anywhere else to practice?
Yeah, I'm licensed in Kansas and Missouri, and I'm based in Kansas City, Missouri right now.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Of course, anybody who has listened to this before and knows me, I am based out of California. And
hmm
so, with this podcast and with this conversation, I hope to reflect on how, even within the US, how different maybe culture maybe played, and as well as pop culture into different states and different areas based on our political climate. Um, in our conversation off camera, we talked a little bit about different superheroes and things like that. Did
hmm
you grow up watching or reading the comics for Batman, or what are some of your favorite superheroes?
Yeah, yeah. I didn't grow up reading comics. My older brother read comics. He read like GI Joe comics, and I was never allowed to touch them. So I didn't really start even reading comics till I was an adult, which is kind of interesting. But I definitely grew up, within superhero world, and my brothers loved Spider-Man, Batman, all those characters. Um, my favorite superhero growing up was probably Superman. I really loved like his ideals, his values, his kindness that he often showed people, and also like the Clark Kent, the glasses. You grow up as a kid with
Yeah.
glasses, and you feel like such a dork.
Yeah.
And it was cool to kind of see like his dorky side and his like strong side. So that was kind of my favorite superhero growing up, and then here recently, I really love characters like the Punisher or Daredevil. Characters that have sort of like a grittier side to them a little bit. So kind of funny
Mhm.
seeing how like that's changed throughout like my life, like who I gravitate towards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, with the conversation surrounding like superheroes and stuff, the way that culture has shaped around superheroes like of their time. Like Batman in early editions is not as similar as like Batman we know now. I know like growing up my Batman was like Christian Bale, of course, and like Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, Dark Knight Returns, like those sort of movies.
Yeah.
But I do think that it is a painstake of its time to like
Hmm.
consider how the Batman that we grew up with, or the one that we think of like when we think of Batman, like who is the face that we put there.
Hmm.
Um, I do think of like kind of the villain arc for Batman. I feel like for me, I do really like Batman, but I found myself so intrigued by the villains that he fights, like
Yeah.
Poison Ivy, Harley Quinn, the
Hmm.
Joker, like how in recent years we've gotten more insight to the stories and backgrounds of how they became their villains.
Hmm.
And so I'm curious how that, if that has come up with your clients or having that conversation around who is characterized as a villain in a superhero comic or book, movie, um, and who is characterized as the like the superhero.
Yeah, the good guy.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love that question. And this topic too is one that I feel like I think about a lot, right? Because I think right now, or maybe always, we're sort of like as a society, we really want to choose between good and evil. We really want to
Hmm.
decide who's good, who's bad, and and what do we do about the evil people, right? Like what do we do
Yeah.
with them? How do we get them to not even necessarily not be evil anymore, but how do we stop them, right? Which is why characters, who have like a policy not to kill are so
Hmm.
interesting, right? Because they do have this humanity and they realize that the villains are still humans, right? Who've like
Hmm.
gone through things. And so these characters that are so nuanced, especially characters like Harley Quinn, right?
Oh yeah.
Where I think her backstory is so interesting and people who don't necessarily know her backstory just sort of see her as like Joker's girlfriend, right?
Hmm.
But people who do know her character know she's so much more than that. Um,
Hmm.
and so multifaceted as a person. And I haven't seen the new Joker and Harley movie, so I can't comment necessarily on like how that's
Hmm.
portrayed in the movie. But, just sort of seeing her as sort of like Joker's right hand and almost like what's the word I'm looking for? Like beholden to him in a lot of
Hmm.
ways. But, through like the cartoon of like Harley Quinn, you get to
Hmm.
learn like she's like an independent person who like
Hmm.
who knew like she's a person outside of being Joker's girlfriend. um yeah. And sorry, circling back to your
No,
question.
you're fine. Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, I think the discussion of like good and evil is so interesting because I think more than learning from heroes, we get to learn so much from villains. I think
Hmm.
because they sort of lean on those maybe unhealthy ways of coping, and
Hmm.
there's sort of this warning sign of, oh, I could maybe become that in a way if I
Hmm.
don't heal from the things that have happened to me.
Hmm. I think also that thank you so much for answering that too, in like having that enrichment because I view specifically villains from Batman in a very similar way. Like you can understand the the like pain and torment that leads someone
Mm.
towards a dark path versus somebody who maybe was nourished in a different era or area. I think Batman himself, obviously, like so much of his story is connected to his trauma as a child and
Hmm.
where he took that to go and into other means. Harley Quinn is a character like she's she's literally a psychologist. Like she
Yeah.
she is
Yeah.
very, very bright, very intelligent. Her comes from a horrible family who
Mm.
just like continued. She's one of the ones that was like, yes, she started as a villain, but at some point she becomes like an anti-hero.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
I think when we talk about like the gritty, like reluctant hero, we think about the anti-hero. And I think those are the ones that I really enjoy because they're the ones that took the trauma, took the pain, and recognized they how they were living and how it has corrupted them. And I like use corrupt lightly because I think a lot of people who have experienced heavy trauma
Hmm.
um feel like they are the villain at times.
Yeah.
because it's a matter of circumstance, or the circumstances that were laid out for them didn't give them resources to be the quote unquote hero. And yet every hero in those same stories comes from trauma. There is not a single
Yeah.
superhero that we view that doesn't start their heroism from the most traumatic event in their life.
Yeah.
Um, Spider-Man with Uncle Ben dying and
Hmm.
the absence of his parents. I'm trying to think. There's so many others, and for some reason my mind is drawing a blank. But
It's usually always the death of somebody close, right? Like the death
yeah,
of a caregiver in some way. Yeah.
yeah, the death of the person that built them up, and I think
Hmm.
so many people have experienced that, and they're like, okay, do I go the route of the Joker, or do I become mixing DC and Marvel, but do I become friendly neighborhood Spider-Man? Like,
Right. Yeah,
it's such a
absolutely.
interesting dichotomy.
Yeah. And I think within that too, those are the conversations that I'm having of, the tools that you were given, like you said, some people are really given great tools to be able
Hmm.
to come out of it and heal and maybe not repeat some of those um complicated patterns in life, right? And then other people kind of have to live out those patterns and they learn a little bit late how to come out of them. And so I'm always talking about healthy, like not really even healthy or unhealthy, but helpful or unhelpful, right? Like maybe for a
Hmm.
time acting out those things and being a little bit rebellious or, surviving in the ways that you had to survive. It was helpful at the time, but maybe we're looking at when is it unhelpful, right? Maybe, when are you getting to like Joker level
Yeah.
territory of, maybe you feel you're acting outside of your values, right?
Hmm.
Which I think is where the hero comes in of
Hmm.
what do you value, you know?
Yeah. What is your morality? Like,
Exactly, yeah. Where's your compass?
exactly.
Hmm.
I think it's also interesting to talk about this in a, like, obviously superheroes and like that sort of like comic level is within pop culture, but then we even take it into further how we describe points in our lives, like the whole, oh, I'm in my villain era. Like
Yes, yeah.
that in itself, and I'm like, is it you being a villain, or is it you speaking up and advocating for yourself? Like, what makes this the
Yes.
villain era for us?
Totally. Yeah, exactly. What makes this, and I feel like so often when people are talking about their villain era, it is when they've sort of decided to like come out of themselves in some way and like you said, speak up for yourself or maybe have like a little bit less of a filter.
Hmm.
And it feels very like, oh, I'm being rude. And it's like, are you being rude or are you just people pleasing a little bit less, you know?
Yeah. Are you advocating for yourself and doing things for you rather than the way that people want you to react to things?
Yeah. Yeah. The way you feel like you should. Totally.
Yeah, because I mean,
Hmm.
people pleasing comes out of trauma response as well. It's
Totally.
you did certain things to appease people and act a certain way, so you got your needs met.
Hmm.
And once you break from that, I think the whole idea of this is my villain era is that other people around you are saying like, "Oh, you've changed, you're different."
Hmm.
I think that even comes as far as like people who have severe trauma within their families.
Hmm.
Um, when you start advocating for yourself and changing the patterns that your family is used to, there becomes sort of alienation of like, oh, this person changed you, or like the rights, like, oh, another person who got by woke media, like that kind of like stupid
Hmm.
ass phrasing
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
is like, oh, they view you as the villain because you're not adhering to the systems of oppression that they have deemed as the good. So I think it
Totally.
also matters who's judging who's the villain and who's the hero.
Yeah, exactly. Who gets to paint that picture of good and evil?
Hmm.
Yeah, and um oh gosh, I lost that train of thought. But something you said, um I warned you about this when we talked
You're
earlier.
fine. I will lose. There will be so many trains lost at some
The
point. We'll
train was
find them
like,
at the station.
yeah, yes, exactly. We got like six trains going.
Yeah.
Um yeah, but yeah, I think like um people who I always talk about, when you're sort of changing these patterns within yourself, like you were talking about, other people are like, "Whoa, you're really changing and you've become someone different who I don't know." And it's like, yeah, I am becoming someone different who you don't know. I'm becoming more of myself. I'm like figuring myself out and learning what I like and don't like, and I'm
Mhm.
coming out of this mold that has been created for me in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond superheroes, or we can still continue in the realm of superheroes,
Hmm.
is there a character or story, or even a person maybe that is like a real person where their break from the norm or their break from what they knew really inspired you as a kid or even as an adult? There's so many different things that I have hyper focused on and have a current hyper focus on, so I can talk about this endless, but I want to pitch it to you first.
Cool, totally. Yeah, I think there's so many. And I also hyperfixate on stuff too. So it's like, at what age I was and who was I hyperfixating on in that moment. But it's like, when I was maybe like elementary, middle school age, it was Harry Potter, right? It was like,
Yeah.
the kid who kind of came from nothing, and he had almost everything against him, and yet he was able to create this like great community of friends and like people who he could rely on and people who could rely on him. Um,
Mhm.
and then, Star Wars characters have always been like really near and dear to my heart. I really love Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think,
Mhm.
sometimes I will be like, what would Obi-Wan do? Because I think he really does have like this like great compass within himself. And of course he makes mistakes, but even that to me is helpful too. Like, yeah, like Obi-Wan messes up sometimes and that's okay. Characters like Ahsoka Tano, again, like this strong figure who has a hard time like knowing what is the right and wrong thing to do sometimes. Like it's really difficult to make big choices, and she is somebody who um there's this character arc of hers where she's kind of thrown out of the Jedi Order and she can decide to stay or leave, and she was really hurt by what happens, so she decides to leave because it feels right for her, right? Like
Mhm.
and so making big changes like that, while scary, if it feels right for you, do it. So I feel like those three kind of characters come to mind when I think about like, like who do I want to emulate in some way, or what values do they have that are like important to me too?
Yeah, I think I agree. I also was a Harry Potter kid.
Yeah.
We talked about we talked about off screen, uh, like I the amount of things that I will also return to when we talk about like fan culture. Just
Hmm.
I loved it so much, and it became a dark thing, but it had so much joy and potential in my childhood, and it really shaped who I was in like that understanding of like how to overcome the things that have been thrown at you that you didn't have control over, and
Hmm.
really inspiring. And I Ahsoka Tano, like, love that character
She's
so
so, yeah.
much.
I
She's
could talk about her
amazing.
for years at a time.
Yeah, I like with my Star Wars like information, I like had leaps and bounds. Like there was points where I was really, really interested and then like where I kind of dipped off and then returned to it. And like very recently, the things that got me really back into the Star Wars universe included like The Mandalorian and
Yeah.
uh the Clone Wars, where we really get to like see the depth of Ahsoka's character. And then
Hmm.
of course her live action show that came on later on.
Hmm.
But even I think within Star Wars, I could talk about this for hours, so I will stop at some point. But the um it's that same thing where we like what makes the villain or what makes a
Yeah.
hero. We see Anakin Skywalker and how good he was or what he the ideals that he was like brought into and thought of, and his like need to be around people that he loved and enjoyed and is not necessarily conducive to the Jedi way, and like
Hmm.
how that struggle for him led him to be Darth Vader.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not spoiling that for anybody. If anybody is spoiled by that,
Yeah,
I'm so
years of
sorry.
spoiling. So
I'm like
sorry.
this.
Anakin is in fact Darth Vader.
Yes, this came out in the 70s, so
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have time.
We're
But
so
like
in it.
even yeah, like Anakin was Ahsoka's mentor. Like that was the person
Yeah.
that she learned from, and she still saw him like as an older brother figure
Mhm.
and still chose a different path because she recognized what was good and what her morals were
Mhm.
versus what she saw uh the order becoming with
Yeah,
Palpatine and everything that was going on.
absolutely. And I think for her, the big thing too was trying to, I think there's moments where she kind of goes back and forth of like, it was that the right thing for me? Like, I think she
Hmm.
holds a lot of guilt for like abandoning him in some way. you know, and not sticking it out and feeling like this really heavy feeling of maybe if I had stayed, he wouldn't have become Darth Vader. When we know
Mm.
that's totally not true. He was
No.
well on that path even before he started being her master. Um, and I think too, like such a big message of you can forgive somebody for their indiscretions, right? Like Anakin
Hmm.
apologizes as like I'm with you. Let's like restore and let's keep going at it. And she says no because
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like you said, it doesn't feel right on like so many other levels other than her
Hmm.
relationship with him. But yeah, it doesn't feel right. And like, what a good message of if something doesn't feel right, you don't have to stick in it,
Yeah.
on a personal level and on a greater scale of, because I think again, within the political climate, it's like so hard not to mix pop culture and politics. They're just
It
so
really is.
intertwined, right?
It goes
It's
hand in hand.
impossible. It goes hand in hand. Like it's on an individual scale and also, within jobs where people say, well, I'm just doing my job. She could have stayed and said, I'm just doing my job, but she didn't.
Yeah, it's the people that recognize injustice and allow it to continue and
Hmm.
recognize injustice and allow and decide that they're no longer going to be a part of that. They're
Hmm.
no longer going to be a cog in a wheel.
Hmm.
Um, Another like form of media that really like very similarly was inspired by Star Wars, Harry Potter. Um, the Hunger Games series was very, very big for me as a child.
Hmm. Yeah.
Uh, Katniss Everdeen, and even now as the story grows, one, it is so indicative of our climate and fascism and where America is heading. We I like so many things that I like consumed as a child, one that were age appropriate, and ones that were very, very much not so. And my friends being like, when I show them things that I grew up with, they're like, "Oh, you make sense to me as a person now." Like you were watching and reading the Hunger Games and being like, "No, this is wrong. This is how you recognize like this is propaganda. This is it's that
Yeah.
and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like my
Mm-hmm.
favorite series in the entire world.
Mm.
I think that is the one that I have the most like I have the books right here. I have some of the
Yeah.
comics. Yeah. I have the series on DVD because I like physical media as well. Um, and I'm still looking out for the next book, the second part of uh Roku's book. They all come in two forms.
Mm-hmm.
Love Kiyoshi, love I started rewatching the series today and
Nice.
it's
You were like talking about pop culture. I should get
I
into
was
that
like, oh,
again.
I'm gonna put on Avatar. And as I'm like getting ready and like doing my hair, it's the episode of like Aang realizing that there has been a genocide against his people. And like I'm sitting there curling my hair and crying because like
Yeah.
obviously it's so
You
dark.
can't
And I'm
not.
like,
Yeah.
this show came out, I was watching this and I was 7.
Feeling such feelings as a 7-year-old. And I've never
Yeah.
gotten into Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, in a
Mhm.
session, I might be like, "Hey, like teach me like what's Aang's deal?
Yeah.
Like what's the story behind Avatar, Even if I know a little bit
Mhm.
about it, I'll be like, "Teach me." Have this moment of connection.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think let's actually steer that towards like how do you bring pop culture into your clients or like when your clients bring in something as far as like, oh, I've never seen that before. Teach
Hmm.
me about this show. Teach me about this book. Um, I have hyper focused so hard on Avatar that I can tell anybody anything at this point.
Yeah, that's me in
Um,
Star Wars, so I don't blame you.
oh yeah. I'm like, what's crazy is I do have a bunch of pop culture tattoos. None of them are Avatar because I'm like, no, this one has to be thought out.
It has to
Like
be perfect.
this one, but I mean, even before, actually, before we get into like client stuff,
Hmm.
Katara, who is from Avatar, was that like story for me of who inspired me as well. Like uh lone waterbender of the Southern Water Tribe. All of her people were taken. There's no men in the tribe anymore because they have gone off to war, including her father. Um, and it's like a joke in the show. How many times is she gonna bring up that the Fire Nation killed her mom? It's like a
Hmm.
drinking game of like how
Hmm.
they're like, okay, every time Katara says but they killed my mom. Take a drink. I'm like, but as a kid too, I was like, no, she deserves to hate the Fire Nation. Like
Hmm. Yeah, let her
they're the
speak.
oppressor. Like
Yeah.
she's
Hmm.
not annoying. She's deeply traumatized. Her mom was taken from her at 3. But yeah, let's go into client stuff. Is there things that you bring out from your own experience and love of media and culture and pop culture and use as examples for your clients?
Yeah, I think the maybe good and or bad thing about me being so
Mhm.
ingrained in like I love everything about pop culture
Yeah.
is that I'm chronically online and like too in the know sometimes, right? So I think that really helps in sessions to be able to be like, well, this thing that happened or I read this article or I watched this episode of this TV to sort of like
Mhm.
humanize their experience, right? Because
Yeah.
if it's on a TV show, surely you're not the only one who's experiencing this. Like, surely you're not alone in like this struggle. And sometimes that really
Yeah.
helps to say, oh, yeah, like other people are going through this. And hopefully
Mhm.
that validates, their own thing. Because so often clients can be like, is this a real thing? Am I faking it?
Mhm.
Am I being too much? Am I hating on
Yeah.
the Fire Nation too much? And the answer is no. They killed your mom.
No.
So
Yeah. They killed
yeah,
your mom.
they killed your
Uh,
mom.
they killed your mom and they genocided the entire Air Nation. So no.
I think the hate is
But
justified. Yeah.
yeah, like hey, I get it. Like
Hmm.
yeah. I think I too like when I'm coming from working with clients and they're similarly saying like oh, I don't have the right to feel this way, or should I fix
Hmm.
this? Like other people have told me, or I don't see it in my day to day, so obviously I'm the problem.
Yeah.
Um, it speaks wholly to like, okay, why does representation matter so much?
Hmm.
And so I'll go back and talk with my clients and be like, oh, have you seen this? Or something that I do with all of my clients when we do intake is at the end of intake, I tell me after we've gone over like suicidal ideation, trauma history, like those sort of things that we like have to like touch on to be like, okay, how am I going to work with this person? I always end my intake sessions with, now tell me about you. What are the things that bring you joy? Do you have hobbies? Do you have a favorite
Hmm.
show, a favorite
Yeah.
musician? Um, and I get to learn so much about my clients in that first take because they're like, yes, I love Sabrina Carpenter and I love this and I love, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, tell me more about that. Like, how can I
Yes.
work these things into? It also goes into like when I recommend things for my clients. Like,
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, are you into horror movies? You're having trouble with experiencing or allowing yourself to experience the rage that you are definitely entitled to, but has been made scary because of a lot of abuse or the way that they grew up around like domestic violence, sort of things like that.
Hmm.
I'm like, okay, have you heard of the movie You're a Monster? I love this movie. It's
Hmm.
about falling in love with your rage. Give it a try. Like it's a little scary. I think you might be into it.
Yeah.
Do you also give recommendations to your clients in that way?
Yeah. I think it depends on the client, obviously, but I think um if I'm more inclined to to recommend like clips of shows because I'm like not a homework person. I just one is because I'll forget to check in on if you did it. That's just not my
Mhm.
style.
Yeah.
Um, but the other two is, I think it is so like I think within the relationship, at least with I have the sorry, the relationship I have with the clients right now, they're very much like I saw this thing, you know.
Hmm.
Let me process it out loud to you. But I think too, like I recommended the song Conceited by SZA to somebody recently.
Yes.
Um
Love
uh,
that song.
yeah, and it's this client I have who has a really hard time with her racial identity, right? Being a black woman, and she's kind of on the quieter side, and she wants to access her strength and courage, but also doesn't want to be perceived as this angry black woman, right? And also
Yeah.
feeling pressure to be somebody who is an angry black woman, right? So
Mhm.
this nuance, like you said earlier, the dichotomy of like those two sides.
Mhm.
And I was like, what if instead of it was anger, it was like this song SZA made, right? Where it's like,
Mhm.
I don't give a fuck. You know,
Yeah.
it's like a nonchalantness as opposed to an anger. Um,
Mhm.
and so channeling that and she was like, okay, yeah, I'll give a listen. And again, I
Yeah.
never checked in on it. So
I think that is also very similar to what I do. I'm like, hey, you can check this out, and then unless they tell me like, hey, I did it, and I'm like, you did? Crazy! I forgot I
amazing.
told you to do that.
Yeah, I forgot I even said that thing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for reminding me how to go.
Yeah, but I do definitely feel like it's like very in the moment
Mhm.
of I'm hearing a thing and I'm like, oh, this movie might relate or this character might relate, this clip of this show might relate. This TikTok,
Yeah.
I've been known to send some TikToks to clients.
Oh yeah. I
Yeah.
anytime that a client is like, so I saw this TikTok, I'm like, you better send it to me right now because I'm watching
Yeah,
it. Like,
immediately.
let's talk
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah. I think too that with that question of like what are your interests or them like willing to share it
Hmm.
with you, goes also into the conversation of what it means to be in a fandom. Um,
Yeah.
how do we create community in the things that we enjoy? And
Hmm.
there's obvious things like going to Comic-Con. There's um I am known amongst my friend group as one being a lot and two just like hey, let's have a movie day or let's have a show day. And I think the last like I would throw like little like themed parties for like me and like my two, four, whoever wanted to show up, even if you watch the show or not, you're going to get fed. I'm going to decorate and I will also be in costume because
Love
I'm
that.
crazy. I
Yeah.
love doing that. The last one that I did that for was the show Good Omens, because I
Awesome.
love David Tennant. And so I dressed up as Crowley. I painted my eyes to look when I closed them, it looked like snake eyes because that's what he has.
Amazing. Yes, I love the
Uh,
dedication.
Oh, if anything, I am dedicated. It's David Tennant's character, and the show is based around the Bible. And so he was the original snake in the garden that
I
turned
see.
that
Hmm.
turned Eve. And it wasn't because he was trying to like get her to sway, but be like, hey, like you're allowed to make your own choices. It's okay. Here you go.
Mm.
Like try this apple. Like it's not it turns what we know about religion on its head, and which is why I really enjoy it. And so I did
Yes.
that, and it was just me and my best friend, and there was nobody else there. It was just me and her. I got a bunch of food that had to do with the show, and it was all to show her the series finale. Like that's all we were
Mm.
doing. I was like, no, this show's incredible. You need to watch it. Here's what happens at the end. Let's cry together.
That's so
But let's do
fun
it in
though.
costume. But
I love
yeah.
that. I love
So
that.
how does that like obviously I gave a crazy ass example, but how does that relate to you or like clients when you're telling them like, hey, if you're looking for community, look for these in this place and these sort of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when I was thinking about Harry Potter, even
Hmm.
besides the great characters and like the awesome stories, my biggest connection to Harry Potter is reading it with my dad, right? Like we would sit and read and, or we would read separately and we would report
Hmm.
back to each other, right? So that was kind of my first like iteration of like fandom
Hmm.
and like geeking out about something with somebody, right? And then after
Yeah.
that, of course, it was like Friends and stuff like that with like Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh and all that stuff. And so I think, just like this sense of belonging, I think, and even just being able to, if somebody isn't into the show that you're into, like info dumping and like being like,
Yeah.
I know necessarily a fan, but can I tell you about the last episode that I watched? Because it was crazy,
Yeah.
and being able to like to like have that joy, because I think joy is so fleeting, to be able to sit in it and say like, this thing that I watched was crazy, and I wanna talk about it with you, and I wanna like sit in the joy for a little bit. Those
Hmm.
are, I think, the biggest connections that I try to make is, you know, I think a lot of people, especially nowadays with streaming, they tend to watch the stuff by themselves, right? Which is
Yeah.
why I think a lot of people like used to live tweet about stuff. I know it's not Twitter anymore, but I'm sure they still live tweet, right? Or
Yeah.
they come on TikTok and they do deep dives into certain things, and it's because you want to
Hmm.
connect, outside of the four walls of you streaming on your whatever platform you're streaming on, you know.
Yeah. It even goes as far as like when the content is no longer there, you turn to like fan fiction. Like, not even
Truth.
gonna lie, the first fan fiction I ever came across just because I was 13 and just like looking stuff up on my iPod. Remember when iPods were a thing?
Gotta love
But
it.
like
I
looking
miss
through
my
that.
iPod Nano.
Yeah, literally. But like I was like looking for more like Hunger Games stuff, and there was a there was a fan fiction of Haymitch and Effie, and I was like,
I ship
I'm
that. Absolutely.
1,000% I ship it, and I
Yeah.
was like, what is this? This isn't not by Suzanne Collins. So, but like. It allows people to, even if they're isolated, like share more of the
Hmm.
story. How do I expand upon this story if there's not more content being created? Or how do I reach
Hmm.
out to other folks? Like, um, I like also wrote fan fiction of my own and like did stuff like that. No one will ever find it.
I'm
It
like, where
is
is it published? Let me read it immediately.
I'm like it doesn't exist anymore. That like the one that I used to post on doesn't exist as a site anymore. And I'm like, good. I don't want anybody knowing what I wrote. But it was still fun to like sit and be
Yeah.
like, and then also get comments from people being like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
loved this. Or like,
Yeah.
I never thought about the story like that. Like it was super, it
Hmm.
created a community, even if it was faceless. You still
Yes.
felt like you were a part of something.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, and the amount of like Harry Potter and Draco Malfoy fanfic that I read,
Oh my God, yeah.
I shouldn't admit it, it's probably embarrassing, but it was a lot.
It was a lot. Like, hey, I think there's so much also like just when it comes to queer joy and queer representation in
Hmm.
stories. Like well, also as we talk about Harry Potter and like the joy that it brought us, we also have to just discuss where it has turned.
Yeah.
So before we go into queer joy, let's take it back a little bit and acknowledge that a story about a boy in the closet became so such the antithesis to the queer community with
Hmm.
J.K. Rowling's just transphobia and turfiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And how intensified that might get in the coming,
Hmm.
time because
Oh
they're
yeah.
about to start filming the show, right?
Yeah.
And I can't remember the headline that I read, but it was something about how she was like vetting people to see if they like matched her values, which I don't know if that was true, but
Oh,
did not dive into that one. I was like, I'm gonna keep my peace today. I'm not gonna get angry about this. But yeah, I
naturally.
think, especially, being how young I was when I was reading Harry Potter, I wasn't aware of my queer identity yet. That, the stories and of course I was reading those like Harry Potter Draco
Yeah.
fanfics, like, and somehow not realizing that I was part of the queer community.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how
Sometimes you
that
don't
wasn't
put
a
two and two
signal.
together.
Yeah, I was like, this is just a good story. But yeah, I think, the idea of separating the art from the artist is something that I talk about in sessions a lot because
Hmm.
it was such a source of joy for people and a source of comfort, and then it
Hmm.
was tainted, right? So every time they try to consume that joy a little bit or read those books, watch those movies, they're torn apart because they're wondering, am I a bad ally? Am I a bad advocate? Am I a bad queer person because I
Hmm.
still enjoy this media? I'm accessing parts of myself by accessing this media. And so kind of like we were talking about good and evil, it's not so binary as that, right? It's really nuanced. And so I talk a lot with clients about like um you can try to offset that if you want. You can like watch a movie and then like donate to the Trevor Project or something, or you know, I don't know, send your trans friend a DoorDash gift card or something like that.
Hmm.
But I think because like you said, queer joy is
Hmm.
so fleeting and is so fragile at times, I
Hmm.
think perhaps we have a right to access things that give us that joy. And of course that's such a nuanced conversation, and that's such a
Yeah.
small way of looking at it sometimes, but I
Hmm.
think sometimes it is just like some things can just like be you can be happy when you watch that movie.
Yeah, it doesn't take away the joy that it brought you to have those sort of things. And
Hmm.
I think if you're not like giving money to J.K. Rowling, like you can still enjoy those things. Because I also following immediately after the backlash that she faced for it, so many of the actors from the Harry Potter films, including Daniel
Yes.
Radcliffe, were like, nah, fuck that. Like that
Yeah, they
is
were like, I'm not with that woman.
yeah, they're like, we're not with her. And also
Yeah,
if you want to think of Harry as trans, like all power
bet.
to you.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and I
Absolutely,
think
yeah.
that also helps.
Totally. And I think like harnessing like fanfics in that way, like the media
Hmm.
is what you want it to be in so many ways. Like it's yours after a certain time, I feel like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then like if it still is something that you struggle with, like that you're like, I don't feel like I can return or you're not ready to and experience that,
Yeah.
there's so many different like you can find more like BIPOC and queer authors. You can find
Yes.
very, very similar stories. One of the ones that I really latched onto after as I was a big Harry Potter kid was a show on Disney. Have you ever seen The Owl House?
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
Not fully,
I
but yes.
loved. I
Mhm.
You need to finish The Owl House. I like not to give you homework, but also you need to finish The Owl House.
I will give in to peer
Uh,
pressure immediately, yes.
there's just so much going from like so anti-trans, like in turfy
Hmm.
language and like what was going on at the time, also turning to this show where there's multiple non-binary characters and there's
Hmm.
multiple trans characters. And
Yeah.
I think canon to the end of the show, every single person is queer in some way.
Which
Like
is how it should be. Yeah.
exactly. Like I think what is her name? Dana Terrence. I will correct myself later, but their contribution to like uh it was, and there's so many Harry Potter jokes in it
That's
because
funny.
Luz is a human going to the demon realm talking like I want to be a witch. And also even just the fact in that show that witch is just a universal term. There is no
Mm.
difference like with gender of like who's a witch and
Yeah.
who's not.
Yeah, instead of like
Um,
witch warlock type
yeah,
differentiation. Yeah. Hmm.
exactly. And so I felt also because uh as a Latina, like looking at Luce and like
Mm.
seeing a brown girl love magic and like
Yeah.
get a cute little girlfriend and like like I was fully like an adult when I started watching this show,
Hmm.
but I felt a part of my inner child healed by seeing that representation, like
Yeah.
the way that she brings in like her values, her sense of family. I believe that Luz is Dominican. And that sense of like, this is what's important to me and this is how I differ, but
Yeah.
being weird is okay. For the little weird kid inside of me was like, it is
Yes,
okay and it's
absolutely.
all right.
And actually encouraged more people should be
Yeah,
weird. Yeah.
absolutely. And then of
Yeah.
course because Disney was like, oh, I didn't realize how gay this show was, canceled. Like, ugh. It
Disney.
just it's so fl
You
the
make it
queer
so
joy
hard to
fleeting.
fight for you.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about that too off camera. Like some people
Yeah.
make it so hard to
Yeah.
to like be able to justify certain things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, but yeah, I do sincerely watch that show and I'm like, yeah, you should finish it because
Yeah.
those last three
You've
episodes also, because the last season is only three episodes because that's all Disney allowed them to finish up the story. And I think the last three episodes, the first three words of each episode title, when you line them up against each other, said, I think it says thank you for watching.
Aw, that's
And
awesome.
like just a symbol of like
Wow.
thank you so much for being such big fans of this
Yeah.
show. And then
Hmm.
Disney not recognizing how many people watch the show and being like, oh fuck, we fucked that up.
We messed up. Yeah. And the
We
amount
messed
of
up. Could have got
times
so much
that
money.
they do that is insane. You think they would
Truly.
learn their lesson, but evidently not. But I think too what you were
Hmm.
saying really hit home for me in terms of like watching that representation, you know, like
Hmm.
there's growing up there was like what zero representation of a Latinx person
Yeah.
just like, you know, who I felt like I could look at and be like, oh, like I relate to that person, you know,
Hmm.
in terms of like the whole picture, maybe certain parts of myself, but not this
Hmm.
like, you know, trans non-binary person who's like, you know, badass and doing the stuff, you know, or
Yeah.
even just like this tenderness too. Like I'm thinking about, I recently, within the last couple years, have gotten into like queer YA romance type stuff because
Hmm.
that's like not stuff that I could read when I was into YA books, right? Like when I was a
Yeah.
young adult.
Hmm.
And something about like books like Felix Ever After, you know, so like so good, so tender. And so those books like that are like so healing to that side of me that I like don't get to access or didn't get to access then, right? Like shows like Heartstopper, which I started
Yes.
watching like when it came out accidentally. I was just like doom scrolling on Netflix, like the
Hmm.
endless search, as you know.
Yeah.
And I saw it and I was like, this seems interesting. And I was like, I think I watched the first season like in one sitting, like did not get up,
Hmm.
did not breathe. I was like, what is this? And now I've seen that show like 20 times, right? It's like, so also using media in that sense to be able to access certain parts of yourself that maybe you didn't get to when you were younger, you know, letting this like young queer self watch these young queer kids like live life and like nothing
Yeah.
too terrible happens in the show either, which is really good.
No, and I think that's an important conversation to have is even when you look for representation in different forms of media, how much of this is going to end with a queer character dying or like kill
Yeah,
all
you're
your
just
gays was a trope for so long.
yeah, yeah. The I remember watching the first season and being like, okay, like so like when does the bad thing happen? Like when does somebody's
Yeah.
mom die or like yeah, when does the bad thing happen? And I think I was thinking that even throughout like the second and third season, which the third
Hmm.
season is more intense, more heavy, but still like
Hmm.
real life bad things happen, but good things happen too, you know.
Yeah, we don't only get to have trauma stories. Like, yes, it's important to process that trauma and
Hmm.
recognize the real things that are going on. For example, the first like sense of queer media that I was introduced to as a kid, once again, my I may not have watched the most appropriate things as a child.
You were
The
like,
like two
I sh
the two movies that I remember like fully when I was like 3 and 4 or 5 years old, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which is rated R.
amazing though. What a film. What a film.
What a film.
You really dove in the deep end and I love that.
Yeah. Like my parents, to be fair, they were 19. So
Yeah.
like when they had me. So they're really young. They're like, oh, I just want to watch the show. That and the first movie that I ever went and watched in theaters was the Titanic. It was when back when we had like dollar theaters, you can go and watch a movie
Yes.
a couple
Oh,
years after release, and my parents took all of us because they wanted to watch Titanic. And and there was five kids in seats. Four of my siblings are asleep. And I'm clinging to the chair in
yeah.
front of me, just staring as the car scene is
Enthralled.
happening. The steamy car scene. And my dad looks at my mom and is like, should we like tell her to close her eyes? And she's like, why? She's quiet and she's obviously enjoying cinema. Like, let her
Let
be.
let them enjoy the cinema. Yeah.
Let them
The
experience this.
hand
I'm just
going
like,
down.
the hand going down. But like even that, so my mom was just like, oh, this kid, they love movies.
Yeah.
So my first like form of queer media was Boys Don't Cry,
Me
which
too.
then I'm like,
Same.
oh,
What an
I should
intense
not.
story. Yeah.
Yes, I remember just the very end scene watching as like a character is killed on screen for their identity. And I, for some reason, didn't take it as like, oh, this is horrible. I took it as like, I better never come out. Like,
Yeah.
I better keep all of this inside.
It feels like a warning for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like and which is why it's so important that not every queer story that we get has to be rooted in trauma. Sometimes it could just be
Mhm.
joyous.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about the Owl House is that even when there's like trouble within the storyline, there's zero homophobia. There
No.
is like there's nothing that is tied, any trauma that they're going through is not tied to their identity. Like even one of the characters, their parents finds out like, oh, your girlfriend. No, we can get you a different girlfriend. It like I was
Hmm.
fully expecting to be like, fuck, Odelia's gonna like be like, oh, you're gay, and she's like, no, we'll get you another one. So even the villain in the story is like,
That's so funny.
he's fine. I'm not a monster.
Yeah.
But like,
Yes.
yeah.
I love that. I feel that way about like newer Star Wars books. I've
Hmm.
noticed, there's not really sometimes with the because I read like junior books too and like junior
Hmm.
reader books and young adult books and
Yeah.
sometimes there's an explanation in the junior reader books because I think they're trying to like, you know,
Yeah.
just like educate people and like
Yeah.
um and so it is funny it unless we're talking about the person's identity or it has to do with the conversation, there really isn't there's none of that, right? It's a Star Wars book and there so happens to be like somebody gay in it or somebody non-binary in it or something like that, you know.
Oh yeah. I did the same thing with the Avatar series books because a couple years ago they started releasing like two-part book series of
Mm,
the previous Avatars. My favorite in the book series so far are the Kyoshi novels.
mm,
Because she is canonically, I think every Avatar is canonically pan or bi.
okay.
Um, Another reason I love this series, because same. But
That's
like another also dark-skinned character who is bi and like it's canon, she falls in love, she gets her wife. And then even in the Avatar before Kyoshi, Yangshin, there's just a little like mention of like she runs into these two water tribe men and she's like noticing them like holding hands and like being very affectionate with one another. She's like, oh,
mm,
they're husbands. They made themselves like the
mm,
betrothal necklaces, but they wear them as like on their wrist rather than like because in the culture it's like the man gives a woman a necklace and that's your betrothal necklace. So
yeah.
instead they made each other ones for their wrist.
Mm,
And I'm like, and I just started crying because I was like, water tribe
amazing.
husbands? Yay! Like, and it's so
Amazing.
little, but I'm like, I love that like it doesn't have to be a big thing with these characters. It's just like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's just also here.
Yeah, it can be so little and yet feel so huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And hopefully one day that won't be, something that's talked about, right? Like
Hmm.
all the stories will be like that, where it
Yeah,
just is.
exactly. Where it's just that's just a part of the story and it doesn't have to feel so monumental to the person reading it. It'll just
Yeah.
be normal.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
All
hopefully
right.
fandom's not getting mad about that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Star Wars has one of the most just toxic fandoms in the
1000%.
world. I'm pretty sure, which is not like a badge that you want to wear.
Mhm.
So you really have to like prove yourself when you like talk to somebody else who likes Star Wars because you have to prove that you're not a jackass when it comes to
Exactly.
certain stuff. And for me, like reading the books has really opened up this like other side of the fandom besides like the people who watch the movies and stuff like that. The book people tend to be a little bit more open and welcoming, or at least like, they're bibliophiles. They're softer and like we're talking casually about books and stuff like that. Whereas
Yeah.
like the movie and TV show folks can be a little more intense with their
Mhm.
dislikes, right? And like not everyone likes everything. Not everyone in the book kind of like I'm part of this like Facebook group for Star Wars book
Mhm.
nerds. And not everyone agrees all the time, but you can have like constructive, like kind conversations with people instead of immediately just like being so toxic.
Mhm.
So yeah. Star Wars is
Mhm.
probably I can't think of another fandom that's that rude. Maybe Marvel.
Yeah, to be fair, Marvel is war propaganda. I love it, and I could recognize themes within it that like
Totally.
are the opposite of that.
Hmm.
However, like yeah, you have to acknowledge what the material is. You can't just pretend that there's nothing bad about it. That's how you end up like joining a cult, like
Yes.
such as the MAGA movement itself. Like when you are
Hmm.
not allowed to critique your leaders or critique anything about the thing you enjoy, everything
Hmm.
has critiques. I love Avatar, the Last Airbender series. I think I've said it 50 times in this podcast. But
Yeah.
the uh even there's so much hate for the Avatar after Aang. She's Korra, she is uh a dark-skinned woman of color. Like she
Mm.
is that representation, and she gets so much hate just for existing.
Yeah.
That she's also canon bi and ends up with a woman, and
Which
so
I'm
many
sure
people
was
hate
just
it.
so yeah,
Oh,
you got to be one or
Nickelodeon
the
didn't even
other, right?
air
You got
it.
to be a person of color or gay. You can't be
Hmm.
both.
Yeah, like, and it wasn't even that show got canceled. I think the final season got finished as a web series because
Oh
it
wow.
tanked in ratings, and a lot of it is nostalgia based of like, well, you're not Aang in the gang, so I don't want to watch you.
Yeah.
But so much of it is also like rooted in racism and misogyny.
Sure.
That's like,
Mhm.
no, she like anybody that says like Korra is not one of the strongest avatars is crazy. Like she loses every fight. And I'm like, she doesn't lose every fight. You have to think too, Aang had his entire like group helping him.
Yeah.
Cora's by herself because her like gang of friends is not always reliable, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of trauma in overcoming resilience in
Yeah.
her storyline that I think a lot of people just like hate on. They're like, no, Cora's bad, Cora sucks. I'm like,
Cora's a
don't
different
on the
story than
girl.
Aang. Can't be
It's a
copy
different. She grows up
paste.
in a different time, and also
Yeah.
I think there's a new Avatar about to break that is now an Earthbender. Korra was a Waterbender, and it's like, oh, this happens in the like cataclysm of the world, and so much like online rhetoric right now is like, what the fuck did Korra do now? How did Korra destroy the world? I'm like, no, no, no. Anybody that actually reads everything, like
Hmm.
every avatar during their time is hated. They're only beloved after the fact.
Yeah. And that's
Hmm.
so, I think with a lot of like thinking about with Star Wars, because I think Star Wars is
Yeah.
my avatar, right?
Yeah.
Like the prequels got so much hate. If you said you liked
Hmm.
the prequels, you were just like the worst Star Wars fan to ever exist. And now, and Hayden Christensen got so much hate. And now
Yeah.
he's beloved. The people love him, they want him
Oh
back,
yeah, I
you
love
know?
seeing him in Ahsoka.
Yes, exactly. And so what if we just, loved the thing in its time, because I
Hmm.
think that's what makes studios make these decisions where it's like, we're gonna scrap that because it does get hate and the hate
Hmm.
I think is so amplified,
Hmm.
whereas the likes of it can be a little bit quieter, not as intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is like the realm of where fandoms can definitely get toxic. And it's important to find people with, because not every fandom is perfect. Like, yeah, Star Wars, there's a ton of shitty Star Wars fans that I'm like,
Yeah, so many.
even I have This Is the Way tattooed on my elbow. And I'm
Hmm.
like, ooh, but who's gonna see it? What man is gonna be
Yeah.
like, I can talk shit about women to you? And I'm like, no, 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 get away
No.
from me.
Yeah, no, you
No,
can't
everything
actually.
else about me says no. But like, yeah, those sort of things where you like, it's about keeping your peace and keeping your joy and finding people who take
Yeah.
from the story the same. There's also people that like, I think right after for the Hunger Games when Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes came out, they were like,
Mm.
damn, President Snow is fine. Like, just like I'm like, don't forget who President Snow is.
Yeah.
Like, y'all made Suzanne Collins write another fucking book because she was so mad that you guys were like falling in love with President Snow.
Yeah. Yeah, don't let the pretty face fool you.
No, that's still Donald Trump, just a different name.
Exactly.
So as we begin to wrap up our conversation, something that I think we've tried to touch on throughout the podcast is how we engage with media, what we take from it, and what we learn from it. So from things that you have read, seen, heard, listened to, whether that's music, movies, film, uh, TikTok, whatever source of media. What are the forms of media that help educate people about warning signs of oppression and how can they act as a form of protest?
Yeah. The cool thing is that so many, if you're
Hmm.
into my wife is really into the sort of like rom-commy type books, and
Hmm.
she would probably kill me if I said rom-commy, but I think what is it? Women's fiction, right?
Yeah.
But I think they're rom-commy. That's why I like them too. I've read a couple of Emily Henry books, and but even Emily Henry books, like they don't have to
Hmm.
be so like Star Wars, where it's like kind of on the nose of like we're dealing with oppression, like Hunger Games, we're dealing with dystopia.
Yeah.
They can be like everyday kind of pictures of people
Hmm.
where, you say something if somebody rubs you the wrong way. You connect with community, you try not to isolate yourself so much. Um, or even in sort of like the literary realm of like books like Babel, right? Where that's sort
Hmm.
of like a dense book with so many messages in it, but there's a character in there who is really struggling to sort of see the truth of what's in front of him, and I think that's something that we all struggle with too, is like sometimes it is really hard to see the truth in front of us or to know how to act when we do see the truth. And
Hmm.
what these characters can teach us is that we don't have to shoot for 100 every time. Like we can be people who learn along the way, and it's okay to make mistakes.
I think that's beautifully put. Like there's so many things where yes, there is very dense reading material like that you can check out, educate yourself, learn more about uh ways in history that we are seeing it repeated now. And there's also fun stories that you can look at and start to critique and recognize things that you haven't been aware of, but or maybe have noticed but had never had the words to place name to.
Yeah.
Um, One of those things is, or one of the books that I really enjoyed as a Latina person, like Juliet Takes a Breath by Gabby Rivera.
Mm.
Um, love that book so much. And it takes place right after 9/11. Girl from the Bronx going out to Portland because she has come out as a lesbian to her Puerto Rican family and is not received well. And she's like, well, this author made me realize like how much of my queerness that I am allowed to be entranced in, but also talks about the dichotomy of white queers versus BIPOC queers and
Yeah.
how that the privilege of being white distracts from your queerness because you don't recognize things that are not okay.
Hmm.
that other people are taking advantage of you of, or trying to tokenize you
Yeah.
with your story because they're like, well, I can't be a bad white person. Obviously, I'm not. I have this Latina here
Yes.
who,
Yeah.
and like that real thing that happened and has happened to me over the course of my life, where it's so hard to be BIPOC and queer and exist in these marginalized spaces and uh, in an intersectional way.
Yeah.
So just like engaging with media that teaches you about yourself, it allows you to question the things in your life in a safe way. Um,
Absolutely.
Karla, thank you so much for joining me today on this
Thank you.
podcast.
Thank you.
This has been such a lovely, fruitful conversation, and I would really love to continue this conversation at another time. Maybe after you watch the Owl House.
Yeah, I'll keep you updated on all the things you recommended to me today.
Absolutely. And same here. I will be checking out a lot of different stuff. Is there anything that you would like to promote, social media, Psych Today page, anything that you would like to promote as we're wrapping up?
Yeah, I'm on TikTok as the underscore trans therapist, and then my Instagram is Millennium Counseling KC. So find me. Maybe I can make you laugh a little bit with some of the stuff I post.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's episode, and we'll catch you in the next one. Bye.